Yo, what's up everyone? We're back. I'll make another video. It's midnight, but I don't care. This one's about how to do GUI scripting, and this one's going to cover a lot of misconceptions when working with GUIs, specifically the difference between starter GUI and player GUI. And I'll just create some basic scripts, we'll do some image buttons, text boxes, all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, hopefully you'll learn how to work with UI, and once you practice a bit, you'll be able to do some more advanced UIs like I did in my RPG series, if you've seen any of that. But for now, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to talk about the starter GUI and player GUI. So if I just play the game right now, so we have starter GUI as a service, and what that basically is when a player's GUI loads, all of these GUIs in here, so game user interfaces or user interfaces, they will clone into the player's player GUI. So this is shared for everyone, so everything in here will copy into the player GUI. If you edit this, unless it's on the server side, it won't change on the player's side at all. So like, if one player edits this, all the other players, nothing happens. So that's filtering enabled. But in here we have player GUI, and we can see that we've got like a free cam one in here. We've got chat. That's up here. We've got bubble chat. That's just, I believe, overhead. Oh, that's something else. I don't know. But yeah, so we've got player GUI and starter GUI. Now, when we get to scripting, we'll be actually referencing this player GUI and not starter GUI, because starter GUI is not the one that's on screen for you now. Player GUI is one that's on screen. Hence, when we disable and enable chat, that's why it's disappearing and appearing. So if I just go here, and I'm just going to create a new screen GUI. I'm just going to call this interface. We have some properties here that I'm going to immediately go to. Z-index behavior, keep it sibling. Anyone that uses global should change it back to sibling. Don't use global. Ignore GUI inset. So at the top of your screen, you have a top bar. When you have this enabled, it's going to ignore the top bar and go to like the top of the screen. And then reset on spawn, when your character dies, does this screen GUI specifically reset? So does it destroy the old one and clone the new one back into the GUI? There's different purposes for that, but I generally have that false. But that just really depends where your scripts are and how you manage your game. So, if I actually leave that in there and play now, so that starter GUI is going to replicate inside every player. So if I have a look here, we now have a interface screen GUI inside our play GUI. And it copied all the properties, so we have ignore GUI inset here to true and reset spawn false. So we'll do some testing. I'll show you some things on how it works, but right now, all you need to remember is that when you have something in starter GUI, it copies to the player GUI, and the player GUI is where we need our scripts to edit, not the starter GUI. So let's start with something to do with the GUI insert, just so I can show you how that works. So if I set this, let me actually make that like not white, so it doesn't blast your eyes. So let's have a look at some properties here, as well as the ignore inset in a moment. We have background transparency. That's just a transparency for it. Background color. Generally, you won't use automatic size, so you can ignore that. Active, ignore that. Anchor point is important. Layout order can be important. Position, definitely important. Size, definitely important. Size constraint, usually keep it relative XY. Style, custom, unless you want any of the default Roblox ones. Visible, important. That's just, is it visible or not? Z-index, also important. So what Z-index does is tells the interface rendering what is in front of what. So if these two are currently 1, it's whatever was created the latest. So whatever was the most recently created. That's what's in front of the old stuff. But if I set this background to 2, now it's saying, okay, this one has priority over z-index1. But still have it so, like if there's still 2, whatever the latest one is created, that will be on top in the same z-index. So, this top one, so that's z-index 2, but it's created the latest, so the most recent, so that's on top of everything. Then you have the background, z-index 2, so it goes over z-index 1, and then z-index 1 that's just in the back there. So, now let's have a look at GUI inset. Actually, let's have a look at this size here. Why did I set the size to 1010? Size has 2 properties, X and Y. Then those have 2 properties, scale and offset. What's the difference between scale and offset? Scale is take your entire screen. So in this case, our screen size is 1600 by 700, and including the other numbers. And we're going to multiply it by the decimal. So let's say, since I have the size 1010, that's X scale 1, Y scale 1. That's saying 1 times width, so screen width, 1 times screen height, and that is the size of the frame. And then let's say I have size as 0.5. That's going to say, okay, make the size of the frame half of the screen's width and height. So if I do, this should be size 1, size 0.5. So if I set this to half and half, now it's only half of the screen size. And no matter how I resize this, it's going to scale with the screen, because the screen's going to change in size. So then these scales are also going to change depending on the screen, since it's half the screen size or 1 on the screen size. And then you have offset, which is the pixels. So you give it a certain amount of pixels the size has to be, and it will stick to that no matter what resolution your screen changes to. So if I set this to 0, 400, 0, 300, I'm going to set it to 400 pixels wide, 300 pixels height. And if we actually change the screen size, it's not gonna scale with the screen like the other ones are. So they have different use cases. I generally always use scale. I only use offset in billboards or surface GUI, since they don't matter in terms of what your screen size is, so you don't really need scale for it. It's more that if you change the part size, it's better to have it scale then. So that way it scales up and down with the part. But, yeah. So if we just play the game here. When I was talking about the GUI inset, so we have a look here. Ignore GUI inset. See how it's going into the top bar? If I disable this, it's now not going to ignore the top bar. And then we can ignore the top bar like that. So if you got like a fade out, you definitely want GUI inset to true, so it goes underneath the top bar here. And then we can turn that off if we don't want it to do that. I always have this property enabled to true. Reset on spawn. So let's say that's set to true. So if I enable that, and I play the game. Now let's say one of my scripts changes the property of the interface. So let's say we move this to over here, right? So that's made a change to our screen GUI. But when we respawn, it's going to reset the screen GUI back to what the started GUI has it as, which is that. So there we go. So that's just what reset on spawn does. It just resets the screen GUI on respawn. Display order, that's the same as z-index, but for the screen GUIs. So which one of these is in front of the other one? Alright, so now let's think of ways that we can do scripting for these. Generally, any local script that runs can actually access the screen GUIs. So I can have one in starter player scripts, can access it. Starter character scripts can access the interface. starter pack can access, starter GUI can access, inside the GUI can access, and it will run. Server storage, no. Script service, no. These, no, unless they're module scripts. Or unless it's module script here. Replicate first, yes, it can. So this will run module scripts. Local scripts as well as module scripts. Workspace, no. And I don't know about camera. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So I won't worry about that. But these are all the potential spots where you can have excluding modules, of course, for replicated storage. So it should really be that. So these are the potential spots where you can have scripts that edit GUIs. And then I'll show you the two ways that you can access the GUI. So I'm going to have this one outside of the GUI. And then you have one script inside the GUI. So when you have this local script here, since it's inside the GUI, all you have to really do is say, okay, this script, get the parent. And that's the GUI. So we'll just do that. Local screen. I should name it interface equals script.parent. So this script is a local script. Get the parent, which is an interface. And we can say like interface.enabled equals false. And that hides the GUI. So let's just, for now, let's just print get full name. So what get full name does, it will print out the path of pretty much the interface instance. So if I play that, you can see it says players.spooky.exe player GUI interface. So this script only runs inside the player GUI, inside the interface screen GUI. Right there. And then we can change the properties of the screen GUI while we're in here too. So if we do interface, what was it? Size 300, 400, dot position. We have a UDIM value here. So UDIM is what the position and size use. So you have the X scale offset. That's a U-dimensional value. So any GUI object uses UDIM too. So you can do from scale if you want the scale numbers, from offset if you want the offset numbers, or .new if you want the scale and offset. So that's X scale, X offset, Y scale, Y offset. So in this case, let's have the position be 0.30, 0.20. Another way of doing this is udim2.fromScale 0.3, 0.3, 0.2. So set the X scale to 0.3, offset is 0. Set the Y scale to 0.2, offset is 0. I'll do it that way. So if we do it like this, we can actually edit this frame from this local script here. So let me print this get full name. So if we play that, it should give us yep, so it gives us our local script path. So players, speak.exe, player GUI, interface, local script. So this script is inside the interface, and then the interface itself is inside the play GUI also. Now let's go to our other scripts here. If we just copy this code and put in here, this code won't work. Why? This player script goes inside the player. So if we have a look at our, so it errors there. So if we have a look at our players here, we have Spook. If we open up player GUI, the script's not there. Where is the script? It's in player scripts, which is this one here. So we have a look, that's our script. So what we need to do, there's two ways we can get the player GUI. We can do script.parent, so the player, .player GUI, .interface, or we can do game.players.localPlayer, which is your character or your player here, .player GUI, .interface. I generally always do game.players.localPlayer, .player GUI, .interface. So in case the script is ever inside your backpack, starter gear, anything like that, doesn't matter, it will always be able to find the interface. And if this is like inside your character, for example, you can't do script.parent, game.playGUI, since it'll be inside the character, which is in workspace. So if I put that in there, it's inside here, and that's just not going to work. So let's do it the game.players.spookexe way, so, or .localplayer way. So in here, let's do local player, game get service players.localplayer. So now we've got our player, we need to get the interface. So localplayer.playGUI.interface. Now there's a problem with this. When we try run this, it's gonna error, most likely. Like that. Now, what's the reason behind this? There's a slight issue with the starter GUI and how it works, and that is it will not replicate the UI till your character spawns for the first time. So if I just play the game again, and I can quickly jump here, inside player GUI there was no interface, because our character had not spawned for the first time yet. So what we actually need to do is use a wait for child. So play GUI, wait for child, the interface instance. We'll print everything here, and then we'll change the properties. So now we can switch between these two. So let's start with the normal script here. So this one should put it close to the left side of the screen. So that box we had should be, yep, towards the left. So that worked. So let's disable that. Now this one should be like on the left side of the screen. So I set the scale position to 0, which is against the left border of your screen. There we go. So that one worked. And we can see here it prints that the script is inside playerscripts.localscript, while the GUI is inside the player GUI.interface. And then I can move this inside starter character scripts. It will still work on the left side there, and it prints the exact same thing. This time it's saying workspace.spookexe local script. So now it's in my character. I can put it inside my starter pack. That should say backpack. Yep, so spookexe backpack.localscript. So how starter pack works is anything inside here, or anything inside the starter pack, will be copied to the backpack when the character spawns. Unless it's like a script. So that worked. And now we have different ways that we can edit this GUI. So if you have a look at my inventory series, you'll see that I put, I believe it's module scripts. And those module scripts use this method here to access the player GUI to access this GUI. Now let's do something that's actually functional. So what I'm going to do is just delete everything here. And we're going to make a scaling UI, which is something important when you're making games. So what I'm going to do is just size this here to what I want it to be. So let's say I want this GUI to be 400 by 200. And I'm going to name this frame. When we resize the screen, it's not going to stay that size, right? So we need some way to keep it that size and make it scale with the screen. So it's important that you have the properties on scale for this to work. What we're going to use is an aspect ratio constraint. So it will keep the size of the frame. So right now it's not, because we need to change some properties. But it will keep the size of the frame in respect, I believe it's y divided by x. If you don't know what I mean by that, that is, it will resize the... I believe it's the X component. Or actually, it depends on what you've got here. So if you change it to height or width, it will resize, in my case, the width of the frame to fit the aspect ratio. So right now the aspect ratio is 1, which means make it a square. So both sides are equal length. If I make it 2, the X is twice the length of the Y. And if we have looked at the size, 400 times 200, since 400 is twice the size of 200, it fits the aspect constraint. And we can do like 3 if we want it to be skinnier. So 3 times that, approximately 400. And we can do like 4. So a quarter of 400 is 100. And that sort of thing. So what we want is 2. Since 400 times 200, that's the size we want. And now if I if I resize my widget, you can see it's resizing perfectly. It's keeping the aspect ratio. So if I put it at 300, it's still half the size. If I put it at 200, it's still half the size, the height. So it's keeping the aspect ratio, which is what we wanted. Right, so now that we've got scaling UI, I want it so right now you can see it scaling towards the top left. I want it to scale towards the bottom left. So that way it's scaling down, up, and down that way like that. So what I'm going to do is change the anchor point. So where is the anchor point right now? It's in the top left of the UI here. So it's hidden behind the resize here. But it's like this little icon. Let me scale up. So it's like this little gray box that's behind that. And if I put this as like 0.35, you can see that gray box now. So that is where that UI element is going to scale towards when we change the size. So what I want to do is, instead of having it move along the X, I want it to move along the Y all the way at the bottom. So that would be the position of 1. So the as far as it can go to the absolute size. And now that it's at the bottom here, I want to just put it in the position, and I'm just going to resize it. That's 420, so that's 400. There we go. So now it's going to scale to the bottom left. So if I try resize my screen, you can see it's scaling towards the bottom left now. So let me just fix something here. There we go. So now that's scaling towards the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put two things in here. I'm going to have a text box, which will be the input. So we're going to make like a little code thing here. So we can import a code and we'll send it over the server. Over to the server. So let's say we've got this text box here. It does matter that you make it scale still. Otherwise it won't... It will like clip into it and it just won't scale properly if you use offset. So make sure you're using a scale. I'm going to make this empty. I'm going to put code here as the placeholder text. And we'll make that white text. Scale that. Epicness. There we go. So now we've got this like little input box we can have. And what we're going to do now is also add a text button. So this will be send. And I'm just going to make that so I can drag it. So if I do send code, or try code I should put. See right now if I have my size as pixels. So right now you can see that this one is offset, so in pixel count. Or in pixel count, I believe. If I try resize this, you'll see that the top one scales. So that one's in scale, but this bottom one isn't scaling. It's staying at the certain size that we specified. And now it's not going to work. In some cases, it might clip. So like this. So when clip descendants true, it's going to clip it out of view if it goes out of the frame. So what we do want to do is, let me just change this back to false. I'm going to make that scale. So just make sure it's scale. So like that. So now if we try that, it's scaling with the GUI. There we go. Let's make it nice and big so we can see it and we can type in all of that. So now that we've got that, let's set up this code system. So how do I want this to work? There's two ways you can do it. You can have the local script in here and just have it specifically for this. So code sender, we can put our code here. Or we can have like a module script or something, the RPG series, inside start player scripts, which we access this particular frame. So I'll do both ways, just so you can have a look at what the difference is. But it's pretty much the same, except you need to somehow get this frame here, which is pretty much the only difference between the two. So this one here, let's do local codes frame equals script.parent. Local send button equals codes frame, wait for child, send. And we'll have local codes input box equals codes frame, wait for child, input. So now we've got each of our buttons, and well, our button which sends the code, and our text box which you put the code in. What I want to do is, when send button is mouse button 1 down, we want to connect a function. So when you click on it, so when you click and hold, or click and tap or whatever, it will trigger this function. And what we're going to do here is just print the text of this input box. So whatever we type here, it's going to print that. So we play that. So now if I type that, you can see it's printing what we typed in here. Now, in some cases, right now, if we click out of it and click back in it, it resets that. If you don't want that, just in the properties here, there should be a clear text on focus. Just disable that. So if you type there, click away, and then come back, you can just edit in the middle wherever. But now that we've got that, that's working. So let's create the server side for this. I'm just going to have a codes remote there. Scripts. Codes service. Code service. Codes remote equals game. Get service. Rocket storage. Wait for child. Codes remote. On server event, connect function, the local player who fired the remote, and we're going to just print everything that the player sends to the server for now. So now that we've got that, so that's just pretty much saying whenever the player fires this remote, just print everything that they pass through. Sent the server, all of that. So let's just jump back to the script here. We're going to grab that remote. So let's just copy that line here. So we're going to get that remote and we're going to fire it. So fire server, and we're going to pass in our text. And we're going to tell the server, okay, through this remote, I'm going to give you whatever is in the text box for our try code here. And what's going to happen is the server is going to print whatever we put in the print statement, which was the local player, comma, player sent this, semicolon, and then all the arguments that are being passed. So if we try that, SpookyXE sent the server whatever we put in here. And we can pass more than one argument, so we can have like true, 1, false. We can pass whatever we want, and the server's going to pick it up. But we want to filter all that when we actually test this code. But you can see that using the triple dot, we can get everything the client sent. So if we just jump back up here now, we don't want everything that the client sent, so we're just going to do code string here. And we'll just fix this up. So test code that wants to test code that code string. So now we're saying when the local player fires this remote, just print local player wants to test code, and then the code they pass through. And what we want to do next is just check that the code is actually a string. So like if I print that, that's fine. But let's say there's an exploiter and they fire an instance. Or they fire something else like a boolean. We don't want that, so we're going to prevent them from doing that. So I'm just going to remove all of them, and we're just going to go back here, and I'm going to say this code string variable here. If type of code string is equal to string, then we want to print. You've seen me do this a lot in the RPG series. All I'm doing is just checking whether or not whatever the player passed to us is a string, and only if it's a string, do this. And that's pretty much done. So we play that. It's just going to function the same. But the difference is we cannot give it a boolean or anything. So that's a string. In this case where we pass true, that's a string. That's actually not a boolean. But if we go to our script and we try fire server here, we can pass all these different types. And you'll see that only epic gets printed because it's a string and all the others are not a string. So Spook wants to test code epic. It didn't print anything else. So now that we've got that safeguard set up, let's set up this other script here to handle it. So this one's inside the frame, but let's say we have something else externally that wants to edit this thing here. So let's go back and do the local player. So we need to get our local player to access this GUI. Get service players.localsplayer. So now that we've got our local player, we want the interface equals local player.player GUI. Wait for child interface. Then we can do interface.codestream or wait for child codestream depending on if you're cloning it or not. But generally you'd have .codestream. Let's disable this one that's inside the frame so we can actually test whether or not this particular one's working. Let's play that. And now if I print epic, it is working now. So this one is using the one that's in starter player scripts rather than the one that's inside the GUI frame here. So that one is disabled. Alright, hopefully that provides some insight on how to do some GUI coding. I won't give like the model file or whatever this is really simple stuff. You can read and type it. But there might be a little bit to learn, like aspect ratio is definitely something that's important. Using position and size in scale mode, definitely important. Z-index I use a lot. Layout order, that's for like grid layouts, that's for list layouts, that sort of thing. So you have to have a look at that. Anchor point, definitely look at that. Another quick trick for those that have seen me doing my RPG series. If you want to center a GUI to the middle of the screen, put the anchor point as half. So that's in the middle of the GUI element. Then you set the position to scale half. And that's saying, okay, put it dead center of the screen. And then you can just have it resize in scale mode. And you can change it to whatever you like. Like that. And then you can add the aspect ratio. In my case, I'll put like 1.45, and then I'd scale it back up again. So see how I've scaled it manually? Now it's off center. Just go back here and just put it back to half. It'll be centered again. Like that. But yeah, hopefully these little tips and tricks helped, especially with the basic coding here, accessing the interface and all that. I'll be linking a lot of people this. But yeah, hopefully you've learned something, and I'll see you around next stream or if I make another tutorial. See ya!